the equivalent of my sock pattern where there's just always one of my needles. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Kuriaknits podcast. My name is Erin and I live in Southern Ontario with my husband and my dog Gibson, and I am thrilled to be making my first episode of this podcast today. I started knitting only in May of last year and it has completely filled my life and I just love everything about it. I love the way that it kind of fills my hands with something to do when I'm watching content, listening to podcasts, etc. I love the community that comes with it, and I just love that I'm able to make things that I want to wear, and it just has filled my life with joy. And so I wanted to share some of that joy with the world and really engage a little bit more in this community that I've come to love. So what I envisioned for this podcast is quite traditional to a lot of other knitting podcasts that I've seen. I'd love to show you what I've been knitting on, some finished objects, what I've acquired, and I also have some other fun ideas for things to do with this podcast channel, YouTube as well. I feel very lucky to have had a background in some design and some video animation, and so I'm really excited to be able to flex those muscles again. I don't often get to in my current career path, and I'm excited to have this as a creative outlet and to just show my love for this community by joining in. And yeah, I'm really excited to do this. And so I suppose we can just dive right in. And my first finished object is the sweater that I'm wearing. I cast this on in very late December, and I had gotten some local yarn store gift certificates for Christmas, which was such a joy to be able to open. And I ordered this the evening of Christmas Day, the yarn for this, and I think I was able to pick it up the 27th or 28th, so I cast it on that day. And this is the Lume by Sari Nordlund. It is a colorwork yoke, and it has colorwork on the sleeves as well. This was my second ever colorwork project, and I'm really thrilled with the way it came out. I think I learned a lot from my first colorwork project and was able to really pull the float so it sits just beautifully on this sweater. If you're familiar with Lume, or I throw up a picture here, this isn't the traditional color fashion that this is usually done in. It's usually a two-color colorwork sweater, and the yoke is done with only one contrast color, and I decided that I wanted to have a little bit more fun with color when casting this on, and I'd love to do one in the traditional way as well, but I'm just thrilled with the way that the colors came out on this yoke. I decided to only ever use two colors at a time for this yoke. I've seen some people do some like accent colors in the middle of their flowers, etc. But I just wanted to make it easy on myself and just use two colors at a time. And I think that that really worked out, and I just love the way it turned out. I did have some problems with gauge with the sweater. You may notice that it's just a little bit huge on me. So when I had first cast it on, I hit gauge, and I had to go up a needle size to get it. And so I was working a needle size up, and then as I was knitting, I noticed that my gauge was too big and I was too far in before I realized to be able to switch to smaller needles, and I didn't want to rip it out. And so I'd say this ended up 1 to 2 sizes bigger than intended. I think I knit a size 4 initially, but it came out more like a 5 or 6. And honestly, I don't mind. It's just like a big, giant, cozy sweater, and I just love the way that it turned out regardless of if my gauge was wrong. So this is one of those beautiful instances where gauge swatching going wrong ended up being a gauge very beautifully right. The one thing that ended up happening though is that, I don't know if you can tell, but this collar just loves to roll. It has this kind of like, I should have done the thing where you like fold it down and knit it double, but I didn't, and so sometimes it's kind of funny. I wonder if I can like reblock it out. but I don't mind too much. I really love the way that this looks. And so I knit this in Cascade 220, and Cascade 220 is one of my favorite yarns. It's affordable and it has such a beautiful color selection. So the main color is this. It's the color beige, and you can see in the skein it comes up a bit lighter. Oh, maybe not, than it does in the sweater. And I really like this color because it does actually, it appears to change colors depending on what lighting you're in. It really is just so reactive to light for whatever reason. I tend to go for Cascade Heathers. I just find that they give such a beautiful dimension to the sweater. But for whatever reason, this beige was calling to me as the main color of the sweater, and I think it turned out beautifully. So as you can tell, I have a whole extra skein left. I debated returning it, but I've actually got a plan for a lot of my leftover 220 because I've got quite a bit from other color work and other sweaters that has been left over. I have some thrifted Cascade 220, which I'll show shortly. And so I think I'm gonna make a striped sweater out of Cascade 220. And I don't know if I'll use this as like the base color of the edging and kind of grounding the sweater, but it's nice to have a whole skein of this, and I think it'll go really nicely. For the contrast colors, first of which is this green here. And I've got this green color here. It's a beautiful heathered, lighter green color. And I really love this color. So this is one of the thrifted skeins that I have. And I know that it's Cascade 220 because it came with the label. And I had gotten this really early on when I was knitting at the thrift store, and like an idiot, I just pulled that darn thing off. And so now I have no idea what color this is. I do remember that it was an older label and that the color had been discontinued. And did I write it down? No. So that's what this green looks like, and that's this green color here. So again, I've got quite a bit of this left over. And then there's this darker kind of purpley red color here. And this is in the color Truffle Heather. Which looks like this. It's a really dark purpley, reddy, burgundy color. And it's a heather. It has really beautiful heathering and even some like greeny, yellowy specks in there. I really love the color of this yarn. I don't know if I'd go for a full sweater in it. Maybe. It's coming up close to my hair on camera. But it's not really brown. But yeah, so I think that worked well. And then the last color is in Japanese maple. And it looks like this. It's got a really nice reddy orange color. That's this one right here. So I really like the way that these all look together. I think that they make a really beautiful striped sweater. I've also got some browns and soon to be a purple, which I'll show later. And yeah, I think I can make a beautiful striped sweater with all of this. The one thing, I might have to make it myself. I'm having trouble finding a striped sweater pattern that I like that is in worsted weight yarn. So if you have one, please recommend it in the comments down below. I really love Andrew Mowry's stripes, but I believe it's in a sport weight. So this is definitely too thick for that. I could pattern hack it, but I'd rather just make one myself. If that's the case, I could just do simple raglan. So anyway, that's the first finished object, the lume. My next finished object is this vest. I've been lovingly calling it the vest 2.5, and that is because it is a pattern hack of vest number 2 and vest number 3 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. So it has the V-neck of vest number 2, but the yarn thickness of vest number 3. And so I just really wanted to use up scrap yarns for this project. I wanted it to be quick and easy. I think I knit this up in 3 to 4 days. It was a really quick knit, and I'm really pleased with the way that it came out, and I love the marling on it. I just think it turned out so beautifully. I've already been wearing this, but I haven't blocked it out yet, so I think it might grow a little bit when I block it. It is quite cropped, but I did want it that way. I find that a lot of vests I wear with skirts in spring and fall, and so I wanted it to be cropped enough for skirts. But I can still wear it with high-waisted pants as well, and I have been on top of turtlenecks and long sleeves. It's quite cold here. It's been -14 today, and it just felt like it's been below -10 forever here. So this might actually be a little bit too warm to wear right now, but I have gotten some use out of it. So this was knit out of yarn for my stash, and the first of which is another thrifted color from that same thrifted haul, and it's this brown, and I do have the name of this one. It's called Vinci or Vinci, and it is just a nice warm medium brown color. And that was held with another yarn that I thrifted, and this is ice yarns, and I'd always wanted to try ice yarns, so I was glad to get my hands on some of these. And this was knit in Master Alpaca, just 25% alpaca, 25% merino, and 50% acrylic, and this is a DK weight. It's pretty pure white. It's coming up kind of yellowy. There's both of them together. That's what the marling was done out of. So it used up 2 full skeins of this ice yarns and about 1.5 of this brown color here. And so it was a really nice stash busting project. And I haven't noticed any pilling yet. I've only worn it about 3 times, but I was a little worried about the acrylic content in this, but it doesn't seem to be affecting it at all. So that's really nice. And I was super happy to have used yarn from stash, and also completely yarn that was thrifted. So a really sustainable, lovely project to finish. So that's that one. So the last finished object that I have to show you is a Musselburgh hat. And the Musselburgh pattern is a lovely pattern. I forget who it's by, but I'll put it here. And it is a beautiful pattern that involves creating a long tube, and then you kind of put it in itself, and then it makes a hat. And it was based off a pattern from the 1940s where they would actually knit the tube long enough that it could also be used as a scarf. As the pattern creator noted, to make it that long, you'd have an obscenely large hat, or like long hat. So the pattern maker doesn't actually recommend that, but it does create a beautiful hat that is double layered, and so thus double the warmth. And I actually knit this up in a yarn that was a beautiful hand-dyed skein, and it didn't quite end up the way that I was hoping to. So I decided to experiment a little bit and turn that object into something that I would actually wear. And so I've made a little bit of a video clip of that, so let's check it out. So today I'm going to be trying to dye the Musselburgh hat. So as you can see, it has these like yellow and blue stripes on it, and I don't know if it's going to pick up on camera, but for some reason one side is like slightly faded. You can see that a little bit. It's way more faded than the other side, and I'll show you what it's supposed to look like kind of as a hat. So in the skein, this color combination is beautiful. It's very Starry Night vibes, but when put into a hat, it's just kind of a little too much. I don't think I'm gonna wear it. So I thought I'd try over dyeing it because I don't want to waste it. It's a beautiful skein. I picked it up in Vancouver. So I picked up this from Michael's. It is a navy blue dye, and I figured like at worst it would just kind of make the yellow like a dark green, and then make the blue a blue, like a darker navy. But like my hope is that it would kind of turn the yellow bluish as well. But I don't think that's how color theory works. So come give this a try with me. I've never dyed any kind of yarn or any kind of fabric at all, so I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm in my kitchen. I've got my pot, and we're gonna give this a go. Okay, so I've got everything in there except for the hat as per the instructions. So they said for the amount that I'm doing to put just under a gallon of water in, about 2 ounces of the fluid, and then some vinegar in there because it is wool that I'm dyeing. My only concern is that it says to continuously mix for a half hour, and that seems like a long time. But also I'm a little bit worried because it is wool that it will felt. Well, I'm very nervous, but you know, I wasn't gonna wear this anyway, like this, so I might as well try and give it some use, right? So it's just, oh my gosh, that's so dark. Look at that. You know what? Even if it comes out just a navy color, I feel like I would get way more use out of that. Let's just press it in. And so this is the finished object. I love it. I'm gonna get so much more use out of this. Is it less fun than it used to be? Yeah, a little bit, but I know that I'm gonna get so much more use out of this. The dye turned out amazing. If you really look close, I think you can see it in the light there. You can see that, you can still see some of the striping, but overall the dye did an absolutely incredible job. I know some of you are probably quaking in your boots about ruining a perfectly good hand-dyed skein of yarn and making it just this very boring navy blue, but honestly, I'm gonna get 10 times more wear out of this. I've already worn it out and I love it. It's warm, it's beautiful. I wish I had made the tube just a touch longer, but that's okay. And I know that this was the right choice for me. I would much rather have an object that's less fun that I would wear all the time than have an object that's gonna sit in my closet forever for the sake of a beautiful yarn. And so I actually have maybe about a half skein of that yarn left over, and I'm going to be seeking a project that's gonna highlight the beautiful blues and yellows in that project without it striping so much. I think what I was hoping was that the blue would be the dominant color and slight yellows would come through. But it was really a lesson in choosing my hand-dyed skeins well and wisely. That said, I love that I now have a way of changing the color of my yarn and it's not as scary as I thought it would be. So I am thrilled with how this project came out and it's going to become a staple in my winter wardrobe. So speaking of the Musselburgh pattern, I immediately cast another one on when I was finished with that one. I think this is going to become my equivalent of a sock pattern, just because once you set up the beginning of the hat, it is just stockinette for inches, like 20 inches of stockinette in the round, and it is so easy. And I'm not a huge fan of knitting socks. I don't love small circumference in knitting. Anything smaller than a sleeve is basically a no-go for me. I've done it, I don't love it. But this is perfect for meetings and anything else. So I think that this is gonna become my sock. And so this is the beautiful Musselburgh hat in its infancy. And so I've set up, so you basically set up these rows on the top and then you knit a tube forever and ever until you close it the same way as kind of you open it up in reverse. And so this one looks like this. I love the way that these colors are coming out. Look at that. Oh my gosh. If I didn't like the colors of the last one, I'm making up for it from this one. So this one's knit a bit thicker because it uses 2 strands of fingering yarn. So it's about the equivalent of a DK weight. And I'm using yarn from Stash again. So I'm using this Knit Picks palette yarn. And this is in the color Finley Heather. So it's just this beautiful, very, very light gray. And I had initially gotten this. I don't remember what I initially got this for, but I've got 2 skeins of it and I'm using it in the hat. And then I'm also using a thrifted yarn, which is probably one of my best thrift finds. And it's this. This is Manos del Uruguay. I was gonna say Milo, but that's not it. In the, I'll put it here. I don't remember what it's called. Allegra. And I have no idea what this color combination is. This is another instance of, I found this early in my knitting. I ripped off the label. It was just a hank. And so I had tried to unwind it without a ball winder and without a swift. And it became a huge tangled mess that sat on my floor, I kid you not, for like 3 months. As I slowly, every single night, spent about a half hour trying to untangle it. And it's a really light fingering too. But it was worth it because it's stunning. Look at those colors. And honestly, like, I wouldn't have thought that these two together would look as absolutely stunning as they do. But I was experimenting. I created a gauge swatch and hello. It's so pretty. So pretty. I'm so excited. That looks so dumb. But yeah, I'm thrilled to have this as a hat. I plan on knitting it longer than the other one so that I can cuff it up. And so I think the pattern says around 18 inches-ish. I think I'm gonna go to 20 and see how that works. But yes, this is my Musselburgh hat. It is my meeting knit right now. And it's wonderful. So the second knit I have to show you is actually test knit. This is my second ever test knit that I've done, and I've been wanting to get into test knitting for a while, and I applied to a bunch and I never got them. And then I applied for 2 in the beginning of, or mid-January, and I got them both. And so now I'm doing 2 test knits, and it's not a bad thing. I just need to kind of bide my time. And so this is the Kenley Pullover by Fine Fibre Co. So as you can probably tell, it's knit from the bottom up, and it is a beautiful all over textured pattern. So it's got cables here and here, and then it's a beautiful moss stitch. I think it's absolutely stunning, a stunning pattern. So the only issue I'm having with this pattern is I need to recheck my gauge. So I did a gauge swatch. I'm trying to be a good test knitter, and it turned out absolutely fine. And now this is looking massive. I just split the back and the front off for the sleeves just last night, and I'm only about 2 rows in to knitting the back piece. I had tried it on now that the back was on waste yarn, and it is massive. I don't think it's going to be a big deal. I think it's just going to be an oversized sweater. But if it's not my gauge, then I think the pattern just runs a little big. But I think that's fine. It's a cropped length, which is great for me because I am short. So I tend to knit everything a little bit cropped. But I think like a cropped boxy fit is very trendy right now. And so I've knit this from stash yarn. I really debated going out and getting new yarn for this because I didn't necessarily wanted to do another cabled sweater in a very dark color. I'm going to show you my next whip, and it's a very similar color to this, not exactly, but it also has a lot of cables on it. So I thought it would just be too much dark cabling, but I decided that I'd much rather use up stash yarn than go out and buy something. I was initially thinking to do this in a very, very light gray color, which I think would be beautiful in this. I think what the original pattern was knit in. Did I miss a stitch? Oh my gosh, I did. I just noticed that I lost the stitch right there. So I'm gonna fix that after this. Good catch, I guess. But yeah, so I'll show you the yarn that I'm using. So I had initially bought this yarn to do a sweater number 8 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. It's a beautiful construction, and she's actually remaking it with a different pattern right now. She's been previewing it on her Instagram, and it looks beautiful. But I initially got that for that sweater. I thought a beautiful deep red maroon color with that sweater would look absolutely stunning. And then I never cast it on. And then I saw sweater number 15, and I was like, never mind, I'm gonna make that with this. And then I never cast it on. And so then I saw it for this sweater, and it matched what they wanted exactly. They didn't use this yarn, but it matched very closely. And I figured I'd just use it for that. So this is in the color Current. It's Palette again, which is by Knit Picks. It's their fingering weight yarn. And I'm holding it, so I'm holding this double, and I'm holding it with this yarn, which is a Paca Cloud lace weight in the shade Elizabeth, which is a slightly brighter red. So initially this pattern and sweater number 8 and sweater number 15 are held with a fingering weight and a mohair together. And at the time when I bought this combination, I was not confident enough as a knitter to spend that much money on yarn and know that it was going to come out looking good. And so I found this Alpaca Cloud, which is a lace weight, and it's 100% alpaca, pretty sure. Why would it say? Yeah, 100% baby alpaca. And I figured this is lace weight with fingering, it's gonna work fine. And honestly, it has worked fine. And I think that the colors go really well together. And although it's not creating fluff, it is making it have the most incredible drape. And I am so pleased with how this sweater is turning out. It's perhaps not everyone's cup of tea. I know people are mad for mohair, and I since use mohair and I like mohair, but there's something about this combination that I think I'm going to use again. And I know that this Alpaca Cloud has a DK weight equivalent from Knit Picks, and I would love to try it because this is divine. It is so soft. So highly recommend checking this out. It's pretty affordable as well, so we love to see it. So the second last whip that I'm doing is this beauty. This is the Marzipan Pullover, also by Sari Nordlund, and it is just absolutely stunning. Look at that cabling. It's got cabling on the arm as well. And yeah, so I am testing this, and my portion of the test is done. So for Sari Nordlund, she expects the yoke to be finished and then one arm, which is great. And I have done that. And so I'm just working on finishing it off now, trying to balance the two test knits together. But this was such an enjoyable knit. Her pattern was pretty well flawless. This cabling is the most cabling I've ever done in my life. I would say don't do this as your first cable pattern when it comes out. I think it's supposed to come out later this month. But the instructions are really clear. She really guides you along. And I think if you want a bit of a challenge as a beginning knitter, you can absolutely do this. Just take your time and put some lifelines in, because trying to fix this, I did make one mistake in the cabling. And trying to rip this back was a challenge. And I'm glad I did. It turned out beautifully. But yeah, just be careful as you go. So the body is made up of 2x2 rib, and so are the arms. And to get the arms looking like this, I actually seam blocked it just to make sure that the arm was fitting good in the way that was intended, because as you're knitting the 2x2, it tends to just seize up a little bit and look a little bit weird and kinky. Perhaps that's just the way that I'm knitting it, but the arm looked crazy. And so I did a very light seam block of this and the cables at the top, just to be able to get some beautiful like mod shots, but also to make sure it fits properly. And it's fitting really well. And so I'm just knitting the body down to a place that I like, and I think I'm going to have to aggressively block this sweater, especially so that the ribbing lays nicely, because as you know, ribbing likes to kind of come together, and I really want it to be stretched out like this. The problem with that is that I don't actually have blocking pads. I've never bought them. I've never seen a need for them. I don't knit a lot of huge lace shawls. I mean, I would never knit a lace shawl. And so I just wet block my objects and then lay them flat to dry. And I've never had a problem with it. And this sweater might be the problem. We'll try it. Usually if I have something like this where I need to block it, every hour or two, I'll just come along and like stretch it out a little bit. And you know what? From just the steam block, it's laying pretty good. I'm not mad at it. And so we'll see. We'll see. You can see all these little stitch markers. I mark every 10 stitches on my sleeves, and I've left them in this sleeve just so that I can track along with the other sleeve when I go to make it. So this is a good, well, almost done. Maybe by the next time, I'm hoping by the next time I film, I'll have this done, and I cannot wait to wear this beauty. Purple isn't usually my color, but I was kind of just drawn to it. The name Marzipan, did I mention the name? I don't remember. It's the Marzipan by Sari Nordlund. The name comes from the original colorway that she knit this in. I think she knit this originally knitting for Olive. Maybe wrong. But I'm knitting this in my tried and true Cascade 220. And this is in the shade Eggplant. Or what is it for the Brits? Aubergine? I don't remember. But it is a beautiful color. It has been a bit of a nightmare to photograph just because, whatever reason, this purple doesn't like to show up on camera the same way ever. Sometimes it shows up really pinky. Sometimes it shows up almost black. I think that this filming though is the truest to color I've been able to get it. But even though it's not traditionally a color that I go for, I'm absolutely loving the way that it's coming out, and I think I'm actually gonna wear it a lot. And I love that I'm slowly getting just like a rainbow of colors in my sweater wardrobe, and yeah, I just love it. Highly recommend the pattern when it comes out. Okay, last but not least, we have my last whip, at least that I'm showing today. And this has been on hold for a little bit. As I mentioned, I had those 2 test knits, and they just kind of derailed everything that I was knitting on to be able to finish them. So they're both due near the end of this month, and I think I've made good progress on being able to complete those. But this one, it's kind of, if I'm dying of cable fatigue, I've been working on this guy, which looks a little crazy at the moment. So this is a cardigan number 7 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. And I just recently split off the sleeves, as you might be able to tell here. Yeah. So this is a really, really lovely sweater pattern. It is a raglan shaping, and you can see the raglan stitches there. And I have knit this pattern before. It was actually one of the first patterns I ever knit, and I knit it in an acrylic yarn. And I loved the sweater construction. I did not love the yarn that I knitted in. It was before I knew the beauty of natural fiber. I'm sorry, these, I've got kind of my longest cables on these because it's what I had laying around, and they keep on hitting things. So I'm gonna put this down. But I really, really love the construction of this sweater. I think it's lovely. And I really wanted it in a brown color. Just, I think it would make a beautiful addition to my wardrobe. And so I'm knitting it in my favorite ever yarn. This is Drops Air, and this is in the color 05. Doesn't actually have a color name on here, but this is made up of 65% alpaca, 28% polyamide, and 7% wool. And it is a beautiful, fluffy, fluffy yarn. Let me pull up a strand here. I knit the Sunday sweater by Petite Knit in this, and it is divine. It is wearing so well. It pills like crazy, but it is worth it anyways because it is so, so unbelievably soft. So when I was in Ottawa visiting a friend of mine, I saw that their local yarn store had Drops Air. None of the ones around me have Drops Air. I'd have to go into Toronto, would be the closest store to have Drops Air to me. And I picked up a whole bunch of this in brown and in blue. And I am obsessed. I love it. And so I'm knitting this with a yarn that is new to me. It is Hobby Diablo mohair. So I saw people online raving about this as an affordable mohair option. And it's affordable because it's 30% mohair, 30% nylon, and 40% acrylic. Looks like this. Let me try and grab this strand. It's a lace weight, and it's about what you'd expect from a mohair. Very, very fuzzy. A lot of fluff. This is in the color 12, which is like a taupey brown color. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not obsessed. So I'm someone who's all about finding affordable options for yarn, and I'm not keen on acrylic, but I got this because it was an affordable mohair option, and I've been wanting to try mohair forever. And buying a sweater's quantity worth of wool and then buying a sweater's quantity worth of mohair on top of that has always seemed really, really difficult for me to justify financial wise. And so I thought that this would be a good solution, and it is a decent solution. I like the way that it looks a lot, but it is a little bit scratchy, and I think it's the acrylic content that's making it scratchy. I'm hoping that with a good wash, it's going to become a little bit less, it's almost like sticky in a weird way. So I hope, but I'm not obsessed. And so I bought this as a trial when it was on sale, and I bought the blue color as well to go with the blue drops air. And I think I'm gonna probably find something to knit with just the drops air, because I hate tarnishing my beautiful favorite yarn drops air with a yarn that I'm not obsessed with. And so I would say try Hobby Diablo with caution. I've heard a lot of people rave about it. A lot of people seem to really love it. I would say proceed with caution, and I'll update you once I finish this thing, once it's blocked out, as to my final thoughts on this yarn. That said, if you need a mohair alternative that's cheap, I have never found something cheaper than this. So give it a go. Okay, so lastly, we have acquisitions, and I've been doing a little bit of shopping. The first thing that I am so excited to get is this yarn. It is a smaller yarn shop out of Vancouver, Canada. I've been really into finding more local Canadian yarn stores to support, and this yarn is by far my favorite yarn, other than drops air, that I've ever tried. It is a bulky weight yarn, and it is called LOL by Project Weekend, and I got 6 skeins of this beautiful color. I'm gonna be honest with you, so this is the color Sienna, and on the website it looks a little bit more burnt orange. In real life it looks yellower, and I'm not entirely convinced it goes with my skin tone. So I'd initially planned to make an Ysolda sweater out of this by the Knit Pro Girl, and I don't know if a sweater in this would look great on me. I'm debating. I might do the Ysolda cardigan, I might do a different cardigan. I'm not entirely convinced, but I've got 6 skeins of it, and there's 137 yards per ball, and it's 65% fine Peruvian Highland wool and 35% Peruvian superfine alpaca, and it feels divine. I've knit up a bandana cowl in this, and it's one of my most worn objects, and so I'm hoping that this will turn into a most worn sweater cardigan of some kind. So I'm so excited to have some of this in my stash, and I will definitely be ordering more of this one day when I've got dreams for it. So the second skein I've got here is the Knitting Loft La Di Da in the shade Espresso, and this caught my eye as soon as I walked into the store. So about a week or so ago, I had a Saturday with basically nothing to do, and I was sad about the state of the world, and particularly what's going on in Ottawa right now. I will say no more. Don't really want to bring this into this podcast, but I wanted to think of nothing. So I drove all the way to Toronto, about an hour for me, and I went to the Knitting Loft, which is a yarn store in Toronto just off the 401 that I have admired on Instagram for basically as long as I've been knitting. And you walk in and they have this whole wall of fingering weight yarns just kind of hanging up, and they have their own yarn. And so I picked up a skein of it. This is 80% superwash merino, 10% cashmere, and 10% nylon. and this is 420 yards per 115 grams. So it seems like a true fingering. It is stunning. I think it's intended for socks, but guess what I'm gonna make with it? A Musselburgh hat. Now holding it up, it's like maybe a little bit too close to the color of my hair, but I don't care. I am obsessed with this color. It's gonna be such a joy to work up. The only question I have now is whether to hold it double or single. And I don't know, but I love the slight variegation, the color, and it's only slight, which I adore, and I am just so in love with the color of this yarn. I love that it was made in Canada, and love supporting a yarn store that's local-ish to me. And the last yarn acquisition that I've made was also at the Knitting Loft, and I got this beautiful lichen and lace, also fingering weight yarn. This is in the color Nutmeg, and can you see how stunning that color is? I have been absolutely obsessed with a bunch of the knitting projects that I've been seeing online that are in kind of this shade of a rusty, pinky, even some burgundy in there. Just this like shade color range of yarn. And so I spent far too long in the store and eventually decided on this. This lichen and lace is hand dyed in Sackville, New Brunswick. So another Canadian yarn, which I'm so thrilled to be supporting, and it's an 80/20 sock yarn. So superwash and nylon, and it's 100 grams and 365 yards. So I actually got 3 of these, and what I'm planning to make is possibly the Tanga, and that's by Caitlin Hunter. And it's one of the most made patterns on Ravelry, I think. It's a beautiful summer top, and I'm not completely 100% that that's what I'm going to be making, but that is the plan for this for now. I've got 3 skeins of it, and I thought that would be enough for some kind of summer top. I think have enough for a cropped Woolen Honey sweater by Andrea Mowry, like a cropped short sleeve. And I'm tempted to do that as well because I love that pattern, but I've always envisioned that pattern in like a warmer color. Woolen Honey, you know? So if you have any recommendations for a summery short sleeve top in a fingering weight yarn, I've got just over 1,000 yards of it. It needs to fit around a size medium large, so please let me know. But I just love the color of this yarn. I can't wait to get it on my needles. So lots of fun fingering weight projects in store for me soon. So that's basically all the knitting I have to share with you. Thank you for coming along for the journey with me. I've had such a fun time sitting here and dreaming and thinking about knitting, and I can't wait to do more of this in the future. I have some travel coming up in April and May and June. It seems like all of the travel that has kept on getting canceled within the past 2 years is all happening, and it's happening this spring. And so I'm really excited because there'll be a lot more yarn shopping in my future. So in April, I'm hopefully be going to the UK. Part of my program, I'm a PhD student, and I was supposed to be going there yearly for the past 2 years, and of course it hasn't happened, so I will finally be going over to the UK as part of my program, and I will be spending some time in London, so I'd love to hit up some London yarn shops. If you have recommendations, please leave them down below. I will also be going to New York City for a weekend with some of my friends. I'm really excited to be doing that, and I don't know if the opportunity will be there to be able to hit up a New York yarn store, but I'm really hoping I can get away and have a look at one. And I'm also unbelievably lucky to be able to be spending the month of June in Europe. We are going to, my husband and I, be going to Amsterdam and Copenhagen and possibly some of the surrounding area, and living in Copenhagen for the month of June. I am so unbelievably thrilled to be able to do that, and I'm especially thrilled that I get to go to the Knit for Olive store in Copenhagen. And so there will be a lot of travel knitting in my future and a lot of exploring yarn stores in other countries, which I am so unbelievably excited for. So if you have yarn store recommendations or even just sightseeing recommendations in Amsterdam, Copenhagen, I think we're really wanting to get to Munster as well. Please leave them in the description down below. I am seeking any and all advice. I've never been to that part of Europe before, and I am so happy to be able to go, especially as a knitter now. Like, I've never traveled, other than when I went to Vancouver, I've never traveled since I started knitting, and I feel like it gives such a new level of excitement of I get to see all of these amazing sites, all of these amazing museums, but I also get to go to the most amazing yarn stores in the world. Knitting has made me want to learn Danish, and that's a problem because I'm already learning French and Latin, and if I add another language to my list, I think my brain's gonna burst. So I will not be learning Danish, even though it is, I feel like it'd be so useful to me as a knitter. But I will be going to the land where Danish is spoken. So thankfully they have got me covered because they probably speak English a lot better than I do. And so yeah, I'm really excited for that. So please leave any and all recommendations down below. And I'd love to hear if you have any advice for this whole podcasting thing, things you'd want to see. I'll be responding to any and all comments, and I'm so excited to get to know some of you. So I hope you all have a absolutely lovely week, are keeping warm in the winter weather, or if you're in the southern hemisphere, keeping cool, and yeah, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for being here.